Well, greetings, campers. We're back at the theater again here in Marion, Indiana, at the AMC Classic. Here it is, 4th of July weekend, July the 3rd to be exact, and Jurassic World has another film, so I'm gonna go check it out. So I'm a big Jurassic Park fan, Jurassic World. It's all the same, just different titles, but gonna go in doing do the real D 3D with this one. So gotta go in there. Got some time yet, so that's why I'm shooting this, because AMC, the big controversial thing that they've done here is they've said that they're adding more ads to their start time. And with that, every time you go to buy a ticket, whether it's an AMC Classic or it's a regular AMC with the premium options, like IMAX or something like that, they tell you that the start time, the actual movie start time, is like 25 to 30 minutes past posted showtime. So what does that do? Does that give you a little bit of leeway and say, hey, we can walk in a little late? I mean, I don't know. But here we go. We're going to go in and, da 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 da. Never mind. Yeah, catch you after the flick. Okay, campers. This one was Jurassic World Rebirth. And I gotta say, this film was entertaining to watch, but however, this is an example of why you should just not drive a series into the ground. Okay, so let's get into the film. Okay, this time it's completely different characters, different situation. Scarlett Johansson she's this young scientist, and she's working with museums and so on and so forth. And there's also a pandemic going on with the dinosaurs, because the dinosaurs have escaped. They've gone all over the world, and they've migrated to this one tropical island that where they seem to have the best living habitat. But if they go to like New York City or Los Angeles or whatever, they are just dying because they don't survive. But also we have characters like Rupert Friend, the actor Rupert Friend playing Martin Krebs. He is he's the owner of I don't know if he's an owner, but he's definitely a guy who's got deep pockets and working for a big pharmaceutical company. But he realizes that these dinosaurs carry, they done a study where these dinosaurs can carry things that would help us humans. And to take, they need to take DNA samples from 3 specific creatures that would help us with heart disease and all sorts of infirmities that we have. So he recruits Scarlett Johansson, Dr. Zora Bennett, to also recruit some other people. That would be Dr. Henry Loomis, also who's played by Jonathan Bailey, and also, so that means that they have to travel to near this island, and they bring upon a character by the name of Duncan Kincaid, played by Mushar Ali. I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. I apologize if I'm getting it wrong. And because he has this boat that boat that's used for like going out and exploring and so on and so forth. And so they go to this island but you find out that the island is where InGen was performing the mutations and so on and so forth. See, that's the thing with the Jurassic World section of the Jurassic Park franchise, is that they go deeper into the whole mutation thing and creating new species of creatures. And of course, there's a big, the film opens up with what an event that happened 17 years ago at this facility, and that they created, spoiler alert, they created a monster that's bigger than the T-Rex they call the D-Rex. And so also in the meantime, there's this other family that's just sailboating, and they're in this area, but they get attacked by the Megasaurus. They get attacked by the Megasaurus, and so that flips over their sailboat. So they have to join with the scientists to survive, get what they need scientifically, and then get off the island. And of course, also the factor is the big the guy with Martin Krebs, the one that's paying everybody. What does he turn out to be? Well, he turns out to be the greedy rich dude who's got all the money in the world and thinks that everything can be bought and paid for. Gee, what a liberal dream that is, to portray a billionaire who's greedy. Like we haven't heard that before. I mean, come on, folks. I mean, this is just a sign that it was nice to reboot Jurassic World and do a follow-up sequel, but do we really need to make this a whole series of films? This is the perfect sign where you just need to close it up and just enjoy for what it is. I mean, I'm sorry, you know, I love these, I love, you know, the idea of, hey, we're getting a new Star Wars, or we're getting a new Jurassic Park, we're getting a new this, or we're getting a new that, these old IPs. But there comes a time when you just need to stop and come up with something original. And don't go, I'm sorry, but this is why we're in the times that we are right now. Maybe, no, rich people are not the greatest people in the world, but they figured out something. You know, it's, I'm not going to turn this into a political rant, but I am going to turn this into a rant about, you know, this is definitely a sign that you just need to stop and enjoy the success you had and come up with something else. We don't need another Jurassic World. As a matter of fact, they've already called this film Jurassic World Rebirth, a flop. It's already a box office flop. Why? And who knows? But my answer is that it's dead. You've run it into the ground. And people are going, who cares? That's what's going on. I read something about this film that how they're already calling it a flop, but they're blaming it on, well, you don't have the IMAX release that the other films had, that the other Jurassic World films had. Whether the film is on an IMAX screen or a standard screen, it shouldn't make any difference. I think even if they had the IMAX release window, which obviously they didn't, because look what else is coming out. We had F1, which was last week. This coming week, IMAX has Superman. That's going to be a big release, regardless of what people already think about it. That's a big release. Superman is a big release. Because Superman is the most iconic of American characters that we could ever come up with as a society, and so guess what? People are going to want to turn out for Superman. Jurassic World is just a nice little, yeah. It was popular in the 90s. Hey, we're having this 90s resurgence. That's cool, right? But let's run it into the freaking ground. And to be fair, that's been done before with Superman. It's still being done with Superman, okay? Superman's been around since the 1930s. From the two teenagers that came up with him and being going to the comic book phase, to the television phase, to the motion picture phase, and on. And it's Superman has been one of those reoccurring characters that has a shortfall and then comes back. And it comes back really strong and then has a shortfall again. But then it comes back. I personally think with the Man of Steel franchise, they could have done something there. I just think that, see, I actually liked Man of Steel. I was one of the few people who did, but they ruined it with the Batman versus Superman. It just got progressively worse, and then the Justice League mess, that was a disaster. It's 4th of July, so we have people shooting off fireworks in the middle of the day. So, but yeah, but Jurassic World Rebirth, it's not terrible. I mean, Gareth Edwards has proven himself that he can be a good director when he's handled the proper material. I thought he did an excellent job with the film Rogue One, which was this part of the Star Wars story, and he literally took you right up until the 5 minutes before the story in A New Hope begins. I mean, he took you right there. And even though he was supposedly fired from that, but I don't know, but that's but he literally took you. I have not seen the creator yet, but yeah, I think Gareth Edwards could have done something. He did something decent, but this was not necessarily a Gareth Edwards issue as much as I blame a Universal Pictures and Amblin Entertainment issue. I mean, this is really Universal Pictures just capitalizing on franchises that we just need to give it a rest, okay? You know, I thought Colin Trevorrow did a fairly decent job with 2 out of the 3 previous films, and then it's just, I just don't feel that this is where I really get franchise fatigue. It's like, okay, what else? No one, and you're wondering, why are movie theaters failing? Give us, Hollywood, give us a reason to go back into the movies. You need to be original instead of digging up old IPs. You need to get something that will get people back into the theater. That's plain and simple. Get people interested enough to get them back into the theater. Give us what we want. Give us an original, good story instead of remaking everything. And you know, the controversy with AMC Theaters, and I know I'm wearing an AMC Theaters t-shirt, but the controversy there is that they're adding more ads. It now says when you buy your tickets on their app that the movie will actually start 25 to 30 minutes post start time. So 8 o'clock, that means around 8:30, 8:25, 8:30 is when the film will actually start. As they're adding more ads. So I'm sitting there during Jurassic World Rebirth and I'm seeing trailers for films that a few are remakes or they're just stuff I could cared less about. Why in the world do we need a Running Man remake? Why? Who cares if the one with Arnold Schwarzenegger was completely campy and silly? What do you think this remake's going to do with Glenn Powell? Yeah, he looks a little bit more average than Arnold Schwarzenegger. But there have been other films that have come along and changed the trajectory of that type of movie. The Hunger Games, anybody? I mean, come on. So it's a franchise dud. It's a franchise. It's cashing in on franchise and intellectual property, and just so I would say for Jurassic World Rebirth, I would wait till it comes out on Peacock and streaming if that's what they want to do, because it was neat to see the dinosaurs. It was neat to see the new CGI creations that ILM does. And ILM's one of the best in the business in terms of special visual effects. Right now it's between them and Weta Digital. So it's, what do you, but I've always said that visual effects are really nothing unless you have a good story. Visual effects are just a tool. Every filmmaker will say that who's done movies with special effects. They'll say visual effects and special effects, they are just tools. They're not the heart of a film. I mean, so this 4th of July is still going on. This 4th of July weekend is still going on. This summer movie camp's still going on, so let's go to the next film. Okay, so now we're moving on to the next movie in this this video. So here it is, July the 12th, exactly 1 week after the 4th of July, on a stormy evening. Here, the thunder's quite rumbling outside. So, but instead of going to the movies on this particular segment, because there was a big movie released this weekend, but I had decided to hold back and maybe go see this film a little bit later on. That way, kind of the hype goes down a little bit, because there's a lot of people that wanted to see this particular film. But and so far, what I've seen is that of like YouTube critics and critics themselves, they're very, very mixed on the outcome of this particular film, mostly because of political reasons. Unfortunately, in this climate, in the whole woke DEI aftermath and battle that we currently face, now, I'm not about offending people. I don't want to offend anybody, but I think some of the most damaging stuff is being politically correct, okay? Now, but what is this film that I'm talking about? Well, this week was the release of the new James Gunn film, Superman. So, I'm going to postpone my review of the James Gunn Superman to a little bit later. So, instead, we are going to travel back in time to the mid to late 1970s, when a famed producer at the time by the name of Alexander Salkind was desperately, I don't want to say desperately, but he was kind of looking for projects that he could take on and bring to the big screen in this new environment, what was called New Hollywood. Now, New Hollywood was a period between late 60s throughout the 70s, in which new directors came on board and new types of films were being made that nobody had ever seen before. I mean, you can just go up and down the list. Films like The Godfather, Jaws, Star Wars, just to name a few. So, Alexander Salkind wanted to jump onto this because he knew that there was something going on here that, hey, how are all these movies working? And these young directors, you know, obviously, what do they have that I don't have? And his son, the young Elias Salkind, then a new producer who became a part of his dad's company, and said, hey Dad, what about doing a movie based on this? And he hands him a comic book of Superman. And so Alexander Salkind, being a Hungarian by birth, he had no idea of what Superman was. And of course, his son, being, you know, raised in a little bit modern American culture, but Alexander had, what is this Superman, you know? And so he begins to look into the comics of Superman and decides, hey, this would make a great movie. Immediately seeks out the rights holders to make a film on Superman. The rights holders were DC Comics, which had just been acquired by Warner Brothers. So, and Warner Brothers, I don't think, had any idea what they were planning to do with comic books, but they decide, hey, here's a here's a company that's making money, so let's have it join the family of Warner Communications. So here comes Alexander Salkind to Warner Brothers and says, we would like to do a movie on Superman. Comes to an agreement with Warner Brothers that they would make it, and they would make it as what they call a negative pickup plan. Now, this is a type of movie financial Hollywood studio politics maneuver that doesn't exist today. I mean, because of the popularity of intellectual property, there really is no need to do such things as what they call a negative pickup. Now, a negative pickup, how that worked was the producer comes to the studio. We have this movie. We want to make this movie. And we will do it as a negative pickup. And so we want to do it with you, Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers and the producers of the film say, okay, they have to agree, and you have to fight it. Okay, it's that the film has to be exactly this long in length. It has to have these certain elements in it, being that it has to have maybe a movie star or somebody that's very, very famous in it. It has to be exactly this budget. It has to have this rating, like the MPAA rating. It has to be a PG-13 rating. It can't be an R, it can't be an X, it has to be this. And the film has to be in theaters by set date. Now, when that happens, the producer goes off and makes the movie. Now, as you notice, there was no talk of money. Okay? It's up to the producer to come up with the financial means. Sometimes that meant going to banks and loaning money to pay for the movie, to get the movie made. And it's when the producer comes back to Warner Brothers or a other studio, whoever, I'm just using because this film is a Warner Brothers film. The Salkinds had to go back to Warner Brothers with the finished film, complete, locked. The print was cut, like the final cut, everything was ready to be released. Then they come back to the studio. The studio gives them a check, basically paying for the movie, or kind of reimbursing the producer what they had just made. Now, that goes without saying, there is a little bit of marketing that has to be taken in there too. So this happened in the late 1970s. So Superman the movie was made on a negative pickup deal. So what happened next? Well, the Salkinds had to work on getting the movie made. Now, I'll come back to their casting choices, but already they had two people, because one of the elements was they had to have somebody famous. Well, they got two people that were famous. They had secured Marlon Brando and Gene Hackman for especially Marlon Brando, a huge amount of money. Like it was like $1.2 million or something, which was unheard of for a movie star at the time. However, directors was a little bit more tougher to come by. Originally, the Salkinds wanted to hire James Bond director Guy Hamilton to helm Superman the movie, but he could not do it because they wanted to shoot the film in England and Canada. And Hamilton said, I have some problems with my taxes, and if I am banished from one of those countries, I forget which one it was, but he was banished from one of those countries. And the job was offered to William Friedkin, who was still successful with Warner Brothers from The Exorcist, but he turned it down. The job was also offered to Steven Spielberg. He turned it down. But then they finally, after seeing the blockbuster horror flick The Omen, the Salkinds chose to choose to seek after Richard Donner, and that's who they settled with for the release of Superman the movie. And of course, Superman the movie is directed by Richard Donner. And there's more to this story, and we'll come back to that after the film. But let's just sit down and watch the movie, and I'll come back with even more trivia and more information about the film, because this is a classic movie. It's a classic movie of just special effects in the era of the filmmaking experience of the 1970s. And this, of course, was riding off the coattails of films like Star Wars, Close Encounters, and you'll see there's some tie-ins to both of those movies when you watch this. So, from 1978, produced by Alexander Salkind, we have Gene Hackman, Marlon Brando, Christopher Reeve, Margot Kidder, all leading the cast, directed by Richard Donner, released by Warner Brothers. Superman the movie. When Superman the movie was released to theaters in 1978, it was a huge hit, setting the standard for what would be the typical blueprint of what comic book movies should be. Now, unfortunately, this film was not without its flaws. You look at it by today's standards, of course, kids are going to look at it, why does this look funny? But you got to understand at the time that this was completely revolutionary. And it was, people were breaking new ground in terms of how special effects were done. And with this film, the whole thing, the whole project, this whole movie was riding on the tagline that what they created for the poster and all the marketing campaign. And it was riding on the success of this phrase: "You will believe a man can fly." And that was the whole tagline. And so getting Christopher Reeve to fly on screen was the pinnacle of everything that was going to happen in this film. Another thing that Richard Donner introduced into this when he was making Superman the movie, he used a term called verisimilitude. And as you can, if you continue on watching the Superman film series, they lost that somewhere along the way. And verisimilitude was he kept on display in front of offices and doors that Superman must have verisimilitude. And there's several key things here that were what kind of put a damper on the production of this film was, first of all, the casting of Marlon Brando. Marlon Brando wanted a unbelievable amount of money to star in the film, and not only that, he wanted the residuals from the release of the film, like a chunk of the box office. He wanted, I believe, around $50 million just for a few scenes of work. And there was a lot of people who were not too pleased with that. And so, and that's what prevented Marlon Brando from starring in Superman 2. And also, Richard Donner was was cut from Superman 2. Originally, when they went into production with Superman, the whole treatment was with Mario Puzo. Mario Puzo came up with the outline of the story and what it should be. And what he submitted was a 500 and a half page script, around 530 550 pages, and it was supposed to be 2 movies. And when Donner read the script, he wasn't entirely happy, and so he brought in a couple other writers were brought in, David and Leslie Newman, as well as Robert Benton were brought in to do rewrites. And even then, their contributions to the script were extremely campy and silly, and just took the verisimilitude out of the whole equation. So then Donner brought on a close friend of his by the name of Tom Mankiewicz, who also worked on the Bond films. And he was brought on to do rewrites. But he is not credited as, or is he? He's definitely credited as being the creative consultant. Yeah, he was not credited for any screenwriting, because that had already been taken over. But he was given creative consultant, and his job was to basically make this believable, and you can see that all the way through the film. One of the key things was, anybody who's grown up in the classic Superman, like the old George Reeves Superman comics, as well as the cartoons and things like that, a phone booth is where Superman would change from Clark Kent to Superman. Well, by the 1970s, those had gone away. The phone booth. There would be they still called them a phone booth, but it was just, you walked up to a thing and there was the phone. There was no closing the door or anything like that. And you have a moment in this film where Christopher Reeve, as Superman or Clark Kent, looks at a phone booth and he says, "Oh, I don't have any privacy here," and then goes into those rotating doors, and then he changes. So they had to come up with more updated ways to do things, and plus take out the seriousness, take out the cartoony element and be more realistic. Like, oh my gosh, there's literally a man flying. And so that's what happened. But this also caused production turmoil. There was friction obviously developing between the Salkinds and Richard Donner. And it got to a point where they had completed Superman 1, but they had 70% of Superman 2 finished. But however, in the middle of production on Superman 2, the Salkinds had fired Richard Donner, and they had forced him to finish Superman, but they still had to finish Superman 1 in post-production. But when Superman 1 was in post-production, editing, sound mix, the final touches on the special effects, like the visual effects, were being done, they had released the film. But when the film came out and it was a huge box office success, they fired Richard Donner. That's what happened. And there was a lot of people on the part of the cast that walked off. They walked off the film. One of them being Gene Hackman, who liked Richard Donner, as well as Margot Kidder, walking off the film out of protest for Dick Donner, because he actually had made a decent film, and the Salkinds were jerks about it, I guess. That's the only way I could put it. So, but also there was something else. But yeah, it set the standard for what comic book movies are today. I mean, pretty much you watch any of the Marvel movies, every time Marvel introduces new characters to like every time they do a new character that they do for their movies, they follow the same formula as Superman, which is you're introduced to the character, you can see the powers that they can do, and there has to be a point where the character has to hit the lowest of low. And so in this case, it was Superman not getting to Lois Lane in time to save her, and then at the end has to pull off an amazing task of doing the impossible with his power to bring that person back or save them. And so you see that all the time in the like the Marvel MCU. And I know this is DC, but pretty much every superhero movie post Superman has followed this same formula. You're introduced to the character, you see what the powers that he or she can do, and then they have to hit the lowest of lows, emotionally and spiritually, physically, and then has to overcome it by doing something that's completely impossible. And so this is definitely a film it's gone down in history books as being the blueprint for how comic book movies are to be made, how just, it was just it caught on. It caught on, but it also had a notorious backstory about studio politics and so on and so forth. And this film, like I said, like I said at the beginning, was a negative pickup deal, which means that the film had to be brought in at a certain length, and it had to have certain elements in it to be released. Otherwise they would lose possession. If they broke any of that, they would have lost possession, and everything would have been back on Warner Brothers' hands to take control. And so, but in 2000, Warner Brothers re-released Superman the movie briefly to a theatrical run, briefly with extended scenes and with some extended scenes and just an overall longer film, just a little bit, add a little bit more to the Superman film, and then it was released to DVD early 2000. And of course, this was approved by Richard Donner to release the extended cut, because this was also around the time, not in 2000, but like prior to that, there would be extended scenes shown in like the TV cut version. So somehow those new scenes would be snuck in, and of course, the nice thing is, I don't know if they've re-released. I know they've put this out on 4K, but this is the Superman Motion Picture Anthology Blu-ray. It came out in 2007, 2006, 2007. The films that it includes is Superman 1, both the theatrical and the extended version. It includes Superman 2, the theatrical version, which was credited to Richard Lester directing. And it also has Superman 2, the Richard Donner cut, which came out years later, as well as Superman 3, directed by Richard Lester, Superman 4, The Quest for Peace, which was not a Salkind production. That was when Canon took over and completely made a mess of everything, because Canon Films was going through, they were another group of producers that just got out of hand, as well as Bryan Singer's 2006 film Superman Returns is included in this set. Also, what is included is all the Superman cartoons produced by Max Fleischer, the Superman cartoons produced by Famous Studios. What else is... there's a documentary called Look Up in the Sky, which was produced in conjunction with Superman Returns. Behind all kinds of behind the scenes, from page to script, and yeah, so it's this massive Blu-ray set of the Salkind, Donner, Singer universe of of Superman. So now, my review of Superman the movie is like this. I think it's one of the movies that it goes down in history for setting a standard of what the comic book movies should be, which is, don't talk down to your audience. You know, be as, we know this is make-believe. We know a man cannot fly. But that was why it was important for Richard Donner to get the flying right in terms of the special effects. He said, as long as we have that down, they'll believe anything that we put on the screen. And that's what they did. They had Christopher Reeve fly. The other thing I was going to talk about, and it just now came back to me, is the relationship, or the comparisons between Star Wars and Superman, is because, remember, this was post Star Wars. This was 1 year after Star Wars. And John Barry, who was the production designer on Star Wars, is also the production designer on Superman the movie. As well as cameos, or at least a cameo, from David Prowse. Who's David Prowse? He was Darth Vader in the costume. So every time you saw Darth Vader on screen, it was David Prowse in that suit. And of course, James Earl Jones dubbed over the voice. But also the musical score. And it's become one of the most famous scores from this composer. That would be the legendary John Williams. Donner heard what John Williams had done in both Star Wars and Close Encounters, and said, I want that guy to score this movie. And there's a story that Donner tells on the commentary track for the extended version, which is, he said, I hired him because of Close Encounters, and he said when they went to record using the London Symphony Orchestra, which also is from Star Wars, when they went to record the music for Superman, Richard Donner ruined a take because he literally heard the music say the word Superman. So, and not only that, there's connections between James Bond. It was filmed at Pinewood Studios on the James Bond soundstage. Tom Mankiewicz, the creative consultant, wrote or co-wrote some of the scripts for James Bond. And you have several of these special effects people who worked on the Bond films. They also handled most of the visual effects for this film. As well as some of the other Star Wars key people. You have Stuart Freeborn doing special makeup and things like that. Stuart Freeborn came up with Yoda. Yeah, I mean, this was 1 year after Star Wars, and immediately a lot of those people were thrown into Superman. So, and it was because of the work they did on Star Wars that got them the job. And so, Superman the movie, do check it out. It is available on HBO Max. And of course, they're classic movies, and they're just fun movies to sit and watch, especially the first one. Yeah, so we're going to go on to the next film. Okay, campers, now it's time for the next feature, and this one's going to close out this video because been sitting on this particular segment for, this particular video for a couple weeks now, but so I need to get the ball rolling and keep the camp going. So we talked about going to summer camp last time, and we talked about going on theme parks and whatever, just like some of the. But this one I chose, this particular one I chose because, we've all been camping with the family, but, and we all have family that we love, but we don't want to see that much of. So, this film I remember seeing a long time ago when I was a kid. I had an aunt and uncle that taped it off HBO, and watched it pretty faithfully on television, and it's just an overall funny movie. Well, what am I talking about? It is from 1988. It is the John Hughes production of a Howard Dutch film, The Great Outdoors, with good old John Candy and Dan Aykroyd here. And, of course, the film takes place in present day. John Candy plays Chet. Dan Aykroyd plays Roman. And, as you can see, the comedy will launch. So, strap in, get your camping supplies ready, because we're headed for the great outdoors. Okay, so that was The Great Outdoors, released by Universal Pictures in 1988. directed by Howard Dutch, written and produced by John Hughes. And by that time, Howard Dutch and John Hughes had a successful collaboration together with such films as Pretty in Pink and Some Kind of Wonderful. But this film was at a different pace for them. This is when John Hughes started to do more of the family comedies as opposed to the high school like the high school comedies, Breakfast Club type movies. And this is where it got pretty slapsticky, and because you have what you have here is John Candy playing Chet, and he's just taking his family to get away from everything I'm not quite sure where this is set at, because it's like Wisconsin slash, like, I think right on the Wisconsin Canadian border or something like that. But Chet's wanting to just take his family out, to stay in this cabin and go fishing, go sites, trails, and so on and so forth. Just take in nature. Okay, while Roman, played by Dan Aykroyd here, he's a bit of a fraud, but also at the same time he's a bit of a know-it-all. He knows how to do everything. He knows how to proper camping technique and like such things, and he's a bit more walk on the wild side type of person. But we find out that he's a big fraud. He's there to scam Chet out of money because he lost his job as a Wall Street trading broker, and instead he works a 9-to-5 job, and so. I just summed up the whole story in one sentence. This is what's bad about the movie, is that the story is so simple, but it's so simple, but it has these iconic comedy moments that everybody remembers. Everybody remembers the scene where Dan Aykroyd convinces John Candy to eat the 96-ounce steak, the old 96er, and of course there are actually places like this, that promote gluttony like this, but he convinces him to eat that giant steak. He drags him all over the lake, and by mistake with water skis. And of course, the climax of the movie is this big grizzly bear. And the bear actually is a celebrity. The bear is a certified actor. Bart the Bear. I'm not kidding. Bart the Bear played the bear in this film. And Bart the Bear has been in several films and TV shows. Even had his own starring movie. That would be The Bear from, I forget what year that movie came out, but yeah, Bart the Bear was the star of that movie. And of course, well, one more thing, Bart has been, like I said, he's been in several films, and Homeward Bound, The Incredible Journey he was in, so like he's been in several films. Okay, so but the story is so simple, but at the same time, it has these iconic moments that happen to it. The only part I know that definitely does not work, and it is corny, and it is goofy, and it's not supposed to be. It's supposed to be serious moments in the movie. John Hughes, I think, was trying to shoehorn. They tried to shoehorn this romantic teenage love story between Chet's oldest son, Buck, and this local girl by the name of Cammy. And they try to have like this boyfriend-girlfriend like relationship bud between them. It doesn't really work in the context of the story. As a matter of fact, and it's not uncommon to like for movies to like for characters to have themes and or like their score, like the music score. I'm talking music score. It's not uncommon for like Indiana Jones. He has his theme, and then his romantic lead, and that she has her theme. Well, in this, it's one theme, and it just seems like kind of a corny '80s pop type score, performed and conducted by Thomas Newman. One of Alfred Newman's son, Randy Newman's brother, Thomas, and they have this. So it's just kind of this drum, bass, and electric guitar type theme. Kind of a. It's trying to be cute and romantic, kind of. Yeah, and the whole thing with the son and the local girl doesn't really quite work for me, and it's kind of a mess, kind of shoehorned in. It's just, but everything else it does have its funny moments, like with the bat between. If they just kept it with the comedy, I think it would work a whole lot better. But they had to put in something for the teenagers and stuff like that. It just didn't make any sense. I can't remember. I'm not quite sure how well this movie did, but I know I've seen the reviews of Siskel and Ebert. They didn't particularly care for it. With John Hughes movies, they were kind of hit or miss with critics. Now, audiences are very polarized by John Hughes movies. This movie tends to be on the one that is favored. It tends to be on the favored side, but it's almost like it's kind of a guilty pleasure. They know it's not the best one. If you're going to watch a John Hughes movie, they don't usually recommend Great Outdoors. They'll recommend like The Breakfast Club or Ferris Bueller's Day Off, or even Home Alone before they'll recommend the Great Outdoors. But somehow Great Outdoors gets lumped in one of the good John Hughes movies when it's kind of a bag of. It has its comedy, but it's such a thin story to it. Okay, you have a husband and a brother-in-law who can't stand each other, and one is intruding on the other one's vacation. So It is what it is. It's not a complete throwaway movie, but it's definitely not. I would not classify it as one of John Hughes' best produced movies. I still enjoy it for what it is. Like I said, I'm not hating on it, but if you're going to recommend. This is not necessarily the movie that I would recommend if you're going to watch John Hughes movies. John Hughes movies are kind of in a pantheon of, there's people that love them, and then there's people that hate them, and I like John Hughes. I like his movies, but there's a lot of people who have said that. Over time, that they don't either don't necessarily hold up, or they couldn't relate. Those are the naysayers. But then there's the opposite side, where they liked John Hughes, and they thought, well, it's so cute, it's so this and that, and then, you know, now that's in my opinion, I think John Hughes was a brilliant writer, because name me a guy who was middle-aged, basically my age now. Because I will be 41 in September. He was basically around my age when he wrote these movies. When he wrote, directed, produced, and he didn't star in them, but wrote, directed, and produced these movies. I was around his age, and so I don't think I could write dialogue for a teenager in high school that's going through detention, because I'm not a teenager. I've never been in detention. Have I gotten in trouble in class? Absolutely, but I've never had detention. And you call me weird. That's just how it planned out for me. But yeah, I mean, The Great Outdoors, it's not exactly it's not a throwaway movie, but it's one of those movies where it has its iconic moments, but it's not the go-to movie for John Hughes. But it's definitely a part of the John Hughes canon, and this movie predated Uncle Buck, and this was kind of in that period when because John Hughes had his people that he liked to have in his movies, and so obviously John Candy was through this period. So, and it is pouring down rain. So unlike this movie with the storm, but luckily I live in town, so nobody should be having any bears. So that being said, I'm going to close out this video. We're going to continue on with the Kdog'S Summer Movie Camp. Don't know how much longer I'm going to do the movie camp, but there are some other movies I want to talk about, some summer movies. Yeah, come on back for the next one. So until then, see you later, campers.